Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About, a series spotlighting leaders, authors, artists, marketers, creators, and entrepreneurs sharing tips and expert advice on business, media, technology, and frankly, life itself. I'm your host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today, we're speaking to Jaimie Schwartzman, Chief Creative Officer and Strategist at Flux Branding. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You have a really amazing background and you've worked with so many different types of companies. I mean, from, auto parts to music, streaming, like and everything in between. But you've created this origins, this idea method. Can you tell us about why you developed it and how it actually works?
Well, look, I work with a lot of business people, and I would say brand literacy at the executive level is mixed. There are some executives who really understand brand and what the contemporary definitions of brand are. There are others that are still find it a little bit mystical, a
Mhm.
little soft, a little fuzzy. So I've developed the idea method as a way to be able to communicate what goes on in branding to these types of executives. And quite frankly, it is best practices, but
Mhm.
I've created a branded version of it to help explain it. And so IDEA is an acronym, IDEA, for the four essential steps that I think are really the best ways to minimize risk when going into branding. I stands for Ignite, and that's the discovery session. When we're doing branding, getting to know the client is a really essential part of the engagement. I really don't feel that we actually do branding. I think we more reveal the brand that's already there. It's much more authentic that way. So the discovery session is it usually evolves in four different facets. The first is doing workshops and interviews. The second is working and understanding the client. We do a session to look at the competitors, and then we try to understand the market itself. So with those four things in place, we sort of have a good sense of things, and we, in many cases, will write a report we call an insights report that sort of shows what we did in Ignite. Then we move to phase two, which is D, distill. And I'm sorry if I'm running on long here,
No,
so
it's
feel
good.
free to
No,
interrupt me.
it's good.
So for D, distill, this is really our brand positioning phase, where we're really starting the creative process. However, I would say this skews much more into copy than it does into visual creative. At this point, we're really just trying to pick a lane of where are we going to exist? How are we going to be unique? Where can we be first? It does take into account all the inputs that we developed in Ignite, but now we're really trying to get a sense of sort of who are you? And this, a lot of it is culture. A lot of it is core values. We
Mhm.
sure get into the USPs, which we don't even call them USPs anymore. I think universal selling principles is a little outmoded.
Mhm.
We talk more about brand promises
Mhm.
and in those terms. So we write a lot of descriptive history about the company, about the type of product, that kind of stuff. And in many cases during Distill is when we do product and company naming,
Mhm.
because we do find that naming is a big deal. And but we
Yeah.
could spend a whole half an hour just talking about naming.
Yeah.
Once we have the brand platform in place, then we move to E, energize, and that is the visual language. And visual is very important. We're busy. We don't have a lot of time. The visuals are not intended just to be beautiful, but they're really a strategic way to communicate complex ideas in visual language.
Mhm.
Because really, it's true, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And reading 1,000 words, how long does that take you?
Yeah.
It might take you, maybe a minute. And
Mhm.
we need to do things in much, much shorter time spans. A at the end of idea is activate. And
Mhm.
that's where we're doing campaigns. But I think it's really important to think about branding different than marketing. We
Mhm.
don't do leads generation. We're not doing campaigns of those sorts. The campaigns that we do are, application of the brand.
Mhm.
Digital is a big one. So web, in my career, you can, anybody who can see me may see
Mhm.
my white hairs. I
Mhm.
remember the days before web.
Yeah,
Web has
yeah.
gone from being, an interesting novelty to being really everything. It's the fundamental communications component for your business. I can say if you're not happy with your website right now, join the crowd. That
Mhm.
seems to be the case. Look at my website, Flux Branding. A lot of people love it. I'm not happy with it. So
Right. Oh, yeah.
so it's a big job. So that's the idea method. Ignite, distill, energize, activate. And for anybody who knows brand, this is nothing is very unusual. This
Right.
is best practices, but at least it's a framework for describing it to people using a metaphor. And so, and quite frankly, what are we doing in branding? We're
Yeah.
using metaphors.
Right. When you talk about culture as a core, core part of the brand, what about companies that have kind of they don't align, right? Or they've kind of lost their way. How do you uncover that and kind of get them back on track with the brand strategy? Because that could be some of the biggest hurdles, right?
Well, it has to be driven by leadership.
Yeah.
And we can only do so much that of the intelligence we bring in if it's not really, if the appetite by leadership isn't there. And we get calls from companies for a variety of different reasons. In many cases, it is about this idea of unity or alignment. A
Hmm.
lot of the times it's post-merger acquisition. Maybe
Hmm.
equity has rolled up a couple of different companies. We're trying to bring them
Hmm.
all together, but everybody still has their former identity and holding onto their
Yeah.
old business card. And we have
Yeah.
to get that through. But ultimately, I believe this type of unity is driven by the top. And I was just writing about this last night that even though brand is really a bottom-up thing, it requires leadership to create the right environment and nurture the right to cultivate an the right conditions for brand to be able to thrive.
Yeah. It is super important, and it they think everybody has it, and then they realize people are talking about the brand in very different ways, right? And there's this whole there's so much upheaval going on right now, mergers, like you had mentioned, regulatory shift, market disruption. What's really important in the first step to take when you're facing that kind of uncertainty as a brand?
Well, look, we are in a time of great change. It's
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons that the agency is called Flux. We do believe that that
Touche.
we're in a time of change, and we
Yeah.
believe that change really is the only constant. And whether you're aware of it or not, things are always changing. We happen to be in a cycle right now where things are changing very quickly. We also look at change really as it's almost can be a means of propulsion. And there's a lot of energy with change.
Yeah.
When you're in a catalytic time, there can be a lot of real opportunities. So
Mm-hmm.
I think first it's a perceptual
Mm-hmm.
shift
Mm-hmm.
by leadership to think
Mm-hmm.
of change not as something that is threatening, but really as an opportunity. It starts there. And
Yeah.
then to really look at it and embrace change rather than try to resist it and prevent it. Listen, as a young man, I used to try to prevent change.
Oh,
I wanted
everybody.
things to be stable.
Everybody.
But now I realize that actually there's a lot of power in change and a lot of opportunity. So we try to encourage our clients to adopt that kind of mentality.
And we'll talk about a big change as kind of our final question, which we could probably talk hours about. AI and the AI driven kind of future of branding. Like, again, AI is transforming everything. Some people love it, some people hate it. You lose authenticity. What advice do you give to business leaders and marketers when they're looking to use AI and making and ensuring they stay both kind of innovative and authentic?
Well, I get a lot of questions about this. And it seems there's a lot of fear about AI. Will AI take over?
Yeah.
Is AI going to take over my job? I think
Yeah.
if you're asking that question, then the answer is yes, it will. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's really the right question. And I think really the amazing opportunity is this fusion between the human mind and the artificial intelligence. I look at AI as a tool. It's an essential tool. We use it extensively, but we also use it in a very um, specific fashion. And I
Mm-hmm.
look at it as any tool, right? We could look at a hammer, right? With a
Mm-hmm.
hammer, I can build a house. I can also, bash my finger if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not careful. And
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly wouldn't use a hammer to try to cut a piece of wood. So
Right.
I think it's the right, knowing how to use the right tool for the right job is essential. It's an incredible tool. We use it for synthesizing disparate pieces of information.
Mm-hmm.
We find it very handy for when we've done interviews, for
Mm-hmm.
instance. We do structured interviews to
Mm-hmm.
try to look for trends or commonalities across
Mm-hmm.
them. Very important. We
Mm-hmm.
also don't share proprietary information with the larger language model. We
Mm-hmm.
use a smaller tool called Aurora. It's one of
Hmm.
our partners right now. And Aurora allows us to have a small language model where we can have a knowledge repository
Hmm.
that's not shared with the larger language model and still is able to reach out to the OpenAI interface to gather additional information. So what happens there is we're fueling each workspace with intelligence.
Hmm.
As we're doing chat sessions, we're creating new documents. Those documents go into the knowledge repository, and that then it fuels, more distinct new creative. I think this is where we're going in brand. Honestly, the days of delivering a brand platform in terms of a PDF are quickly coming to an end.
Yeah.
Where instead, we'll be delivering a brand intelligence platform that assists everybody to be able to script in brand language.
That's a great use of AI and a great way to think about it, the small language model that you have. Um, when companies want to get a hold of you to talk about their brand, work on the brand, like what's the best way for them to reach you?
Best way is to come to our website, fluxbranding.com. And there's a couple of cool free tools on our website too. So if anybody wants to try them, I encourage you to use them. One that we have is the brand decoder.
I
The
love
brand
that.
decoder is it used to be a 15 question analysis. Now I've come down to 6 questions, little sliders. And based on that, it will give you sort of a modified brand archetype that we think you're aligned with. You will either be a dreamer, a lover, an explorer, or a protector. And
Yep.
then there's a cool, you get the answer. You don't need to put in your email or anything. If you do want a detailed report, put in your email. We'll give it to you. And we'll then add you to our list. I write an essay, a detailed essay on branding every month. It comes out on the first Tuesday of the month. I've been writing it, and it's almost year 12 now of the
Wow.
same first Tuesday every month.
That's
And
great.
so, that is another thing is writing. And currently, in addition, I'm writing a book called Brilliant, which is all about branding. So if you do want to get in touch with us, please come to Flux Branding. We do have a pretty cool initial uh, process that we do called the brand blueprint.
Hmm.
And this isn't really appropriate for small startups or
Hmm.
solopreneurs, but for larger firms that are looking to sort of get this brand thing out of their head. They think they might need it. I walk through a process. It's a 30-minute intake session. We then are able to optimize that and generate a report that gives you a gap analysis, a sense of where you're at right now.
Hmm.
We think we might be able to get into some scope of work of what's required, but it's a really helpful document for people because brand it sometimes can be difficult to communicate and difficult to budget against.
Definitely. Jaimie, thank you so much. I've had a great time talking to you. Good luck with everything. And everybody reach out to Flux Branding. I'm going to go look at those free tools.
Thanks,
I love
Cynthia. It
it.
was a really great chat today. Thanks for having me.